Chanel, welcome to Give It a Nudge. It's a pleasure to have you on. You and I met through Antler. As you know, we've had a lot of companies from Antler on the show. I'm an Antler investor. We've had Antler on the show. So we've had more and more as a business than in the Nudge Group to do with Antler. And that's how we met and really liked your story and where you're at. But for everyone else who doesn't know that, and I'm interested to know a little bit more about where you are because we haven't spoken for ages, but let's give the viewers a little bit of a frame of your business first, and we can come on to you later, but tell them what your business is, where you're sort of at from a life cycle point of view, and what it does.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So One Key Access, we created One Key Access to address the unresolved e-commerce problem, which is the last 50 metres of the delivery. And so we do that for 3 customers, one being the resident, and we're very focused on residents that live in apartments. 1 in 10 Australians live in an apartment, and it's notoriously really difficult to receive your deliveries as a resident of an apartment. We also solve a solution for couriers who find it actually difficult to actually deliver to an apartment. So most deliveries, and up to over 60% of deliveries to apartments, have failed and need to go to an alternative delivery point.
Really?
Also, if you think about a courier who's hitting up multiple apartments every day, there's an average time to deliver of between 3 to 5 minutes. Now, that adds up for every resident and every apartment that they're delivering to. So it's not the greatest working experience for the courier who's standing outside buildings. The other customer that we really help is building managers who are currently chasing around camera footage to look for thieves of stolen deliveries from the foyer. We're really new as a company. We a pre-launch. We will be launching into our first building in October, which is a new development in Ivanhoe. It's going to be a beautiful building, and we're really excited about going live with that. We have all the major couriers in Australia signed up to our platform, ready to go with us, and so we're really excited about that.
That is so cool. I had no idea of some of those stats. I didn't realize that, and I guess I've thought about it. There's some of the guys that work at Nudge live in big apartment blocks, some of those massive ones, and we sent them some things. Like we sent them a hamper at one stage, we sent them some cupcakes, we sent them things during lockdown, and they don't get them. But I didn't realize 60% fail. That is just monumental. And I got to say, as a person, I'm lucky enough to live in a house, but if your parcel supposedly came but you didn't get it and then you have to go and get it, it's the most annoying thing in the world. And look, what a timely time to be in this business. I mean, we'll come back to a little bit about you in a second and how you got there, but to be addressing this problem now in the way that we are is quite fascinating. So tell me, how do you solve that problem? How does it work?
Yeah, so we're a technology company. We register buildings and building access systems to our platform. We also register couriers to our platform and other parcel lockers. And what we do is we issue each courier with a universal credential, which becomes their One Key Access, essentially master key, to get automated entry into any building that's on their delivery route during their delivery time. So really how it works is a courier will approach a building, they'll have a One Key Access key, and it'll be in the form of a fob at the moment. So they'll walk up to the building, swipe on like a normal resident does, immediately enter the building, and then there'll usually be a secure place for them to deliver into, whether it's a safe drop location or a parcel locker or a mailroom.
Right. So you literally are giving them like a skeleton key to the world, but only for where their parcels are going at that time. And it's all, and that access, once they've delivered that parcel, I'm assuming shuts down and then will no longer work, and it will work on the next one and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, so the way that we're designed to operate is, and at least in the first instance, we'll continuously improve the platform. But the first instance is that the couriers have got access to any building that they're trying to get into that's on their delivery route, and we scope it down by the locations that they're delivering to. We're not scoping down by delivery just yet, but that'll be an improvement that we start to build up on.
Awesome. How good. What a good idea. All right. Well, I love it. We'll talk more about that and obviously how the world's affected it and so forth. But let's go back to you because anyone who, and I actually don't know anything about your past pre-Antler. I obviously saw you doing your pitch and so forth, and that's how we met. But I'm always fascinated about how people get into that program and what they've done prior. So tell me, it's a big step to go and give up whatever it was you were doing prior and go and jump into the Antler program to try and meet a co-founder and build a business. It's a huge, huge step. In some respects, I think it's an even braver step than just starting a business that you always had in your head sometimes. But tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in the Antler program.
So we were actually quite a unique case for Antler. Antler invested in us like a typical VC invests in a startup. And so we came to Antler. We had an existing team, existing business that we'd been working on for some time. And Antler invested in us as essentially a standard VC. It's a little bit different in the sense with some of the other startups where they find their co-founders, they formalize their solution that they're bringing out to market. We already had that locked up. We had a lot of the couriers locked up to our platform. What we saw was really good opportunity for Antler to help us essentially refine our proposition and the way we go to market and help us grow to become a really successful company.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, what were you doing? Tell us something. I didn't know that actually. I know that they have done that on a few occasions, so it's interesting. So, tell me, what were you doing prior to One Key Access, and how did that eventuate? How did you start that business? How did you hire your team of 5? Where did all that come from? And what was it that made you suddenly go, you know what? Was it that you were doing a lot of internet shopping and that you couldn't get anything? Or what was it that drove you to suddenly go, I need to do something about this?
So I guess that I'm an avid online shopper. I absolutely love online shopping. I was previously working at Australia Post in last mile delivery innovation and saw a huge gap in the market for a solution that is One Key Access, but worked on a portfolio of initiatives for Australia Post. Also worked for a few other companies in innovation, and before that I was the previous startup founder of an e-commerce store. So I think seeing the opportunities within Australia Post for a solution that not only solved the problem for Australia Post, but for every courier, every delivery driver, including groceries, dry cleaners, food delivery drivers. I was very inspired to create a solution that helped all of the couriers be able to do their delivery really well, but also everyone else that's shopping online for them to be able to get their order really easily.
Absolutely. And how did you find? Have you got a co-founder? I think you have. Am I right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And so how did that relationship come about? Were you both at Australia Post or?
Yeah, one of my co-founders, Ray, we worked together at Australia Post. He was my corporate finance stakeholder, so previous experience working together. We worked really well together. We've got complementary skill set, the time was just right for him to join One Key Access and for us to create this solution together.
Interesting. All right. So tell me, your previous life as an e-commerce founder, do you think that there were some things that you learned during that time? And, you learn something with everything, right? But do you think being a second-time founder has made it significantly easier? Or is it like, I use an analogy, and I don't know if you have children, but I have 2 children. When you have your first child, you have no idea what you're doing. When you have your second child, you feel like you know what you're doing, but the reality is the second child's so different, you actually don't know what you're doing again. I'm wondering, has it been the same for you with your second-time founder? Have you found that you brought a lot of the learnings, or is it just almost starting again because it's a different business?
Do you know what? I think it's actually a bit more difficult because I know how difficult it is and I know what I'm up for. When I was the first time founder, I thought I knew everything. And so I approached everything as though it was going to be great and I was just going to get through everything. But I think the ignorance is bliss, right? Whereas this time around, I know what I'm getting myself into. And so there's almost like this anticipation of knowing that something is going to be difficult before you go into it rather than going into something blindly. Having said that, there's the resilience that I built along the way. And I think it is very much a skill to learn to just keep going and pushing through when things aren't working out. And that's a skill that I learned from my first business that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And so it's a really hard question to answer because it's both easier and also more difficult.
That's a good answer, but I do tend to agree. I think blind optimism is a wonderful thing, and unfortunately, once it's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back. So let's talk about the obvious subject, particularly for you, pandemics, lockdowns, the absolute surge in e-commerce, globally. How has that impacted you? Your pre-launch, obviously. Have you found that there's suddenly a more willingness around, not necessarily the providers, but I guess buildings? Have you found that it's really become a subject so that it's accelerated your growth? How's it sort of impacted you during this time?
Yeah, it has absolutely made it more difficult because a lot of what we do, at least with signing on buildings, a lot of it's face-to-face and direct sales, in meeting owners, corporation managers, meeting with building managers. So that aspect of it has been difficult. I mean, on the other side of it, demand for a solution has increased rapidly because you've got 82% of households purchasing online. E-commerce is now 14% of retail spend. Got 32% growth year on year in e-commerce. And so the demand, the sheer volume of deliveries going out to buildings is significantly higher, which increases the prevalence of the problem. And so it absolutely has made it more difficult, but also it's helped accelerate demand, and it helped accelerate the intensity of the problem, essentially. So it's both. It's helped, but also made it more difficult because it's been harder to build those relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was on the news. Was it on the news yesterday? And, I try not to watch the news at the moment because it just seems very repetitive. But I think it was in the morning, I was getting the kids breakfast. I saw a short of something. They were talking about deliveries, and they were talking about Australia Post was trying to hire, and this huge problem about delivery. So I guess with what you're trying to do, you've already got your providers on board, and now you're going out and getting those buildings. How hard is that? Is that dealing with strata companies? Is that dealing with building managers? Because those two industries, I know, because we deal with some startups in that space, are incredibly archaic in the way that they work. They really are not necessarily naturally forward-thinking industries. And here are you coming up with an idea where you want to give people access that they don't know to their buildings. Have you had a lot of resistance around that? And how have those conversations gone? Have you found that that part of the business for you is very open-minded and wants this? Obviously, the consumer really wants it, and the provider delivering the parcel really wants it. But have you found that as a roadblock, or have you found that they're actually more open than you thought?
Whenever you're doing something new, you're always going to come up against resistance. The thing with One Key Access is that we actually increase the desirability of the building for tenants. And so with there are stats that are coming out of the US with buildings that have smart access systems and smart delivery systems within there. Those buildings that are actually tenanted faster, they're in higher demand, and they're also sold at higher prices. And so with what we're bringing to the building is there's a lot of value add that we actually bring to the building. And once the owners, corporations and the body corporates start to understand that, there's a higher propensity for them to adopt the solution. Also, when it always helps when people on the committee shop online a lot and can't receive their deliveries.
Well, luckily, as you said, that's everybody right now, right? Because we're not allowed to go anywhere. So, in a lot of the country anyway. That's very true. What do you think has been the biggest, probably learning you've had from a mistake in either this business or prior in your e-commerce business? It might well have been back then, but I think there's always certain massive points in growing a business where you have this huge aha moment, usually from something you did that you just didn't realize. What would be your biggest one that you can think of so far?
I would say just assuming that someone's going to buy something without testing it. That's always the biggest. It's so funny. Some of the products that have sold, or the solutions that have sold, have been the ones that I never thought would. And so learning from that, I'd always test whatever we're about to sell. So we'll always go through some kind of customer desirability testing that involves pre-sale. So it's not just research, it's actually, will people part with their money? And then that helps to break down the barriers of, okay, these are our assumptions around what we think will sell and what the market wants, but this is actually what the market wants. And so the biggest challenge is probably is just assuming what the market wants without testing it.
Yep. No, I've been through that journey myself, came up with all sorts of wonderful ideas and no one liked any of them. And the simple stuff is what everybody loves. So I think everybody learns that one. Now, whereabouts are you based? Am I right in thinking you're in Brisbane?
Melbourne.
Melbourne. Okay. So
No, we're
you
in
are,
Melbourne.
yeah. So you're definitely in the lockdown world like we are here in Sydney. Tell me, has there been, and you've had more lockdowns than I think anyone else in the world. So tell me, it's been hard, but I try and look at the positives of it, right? So has there been any new habits that you have developed because of lockdown? And has there been any sort of aha, again, moments around maybe something that you believe that your opinion might have changed on? The pandemic's changed a lot of people's views on things. Just interested to know how it's impacted you from a mental perspective in terms of beliefs, but also if there's any new habits that you've picked up that might be positives.
My new habits have been more so around making sure that I'm getting out and walking around. I tend to, when I'm at the office, when you're at the office, you tend to go out and have a walk around and have a coffee. When you're at home, it's always a lot more difficult, and I find that sometimes I can just stay home all day, and that's not good. So it is going and walking around, but that's probably the biggest habit that I've made sure to adopt, is just constantly taking breaks and walking around. Having said that, I've got 2 post offices near me, and so I'll walk past and see how many people are standing outside of the line at 4:00 who unfortunately didn't get their deliveries.
What's the record number you've seen so far? Has it gone up during the pandemic? I assume it has.
Yeah, do you know what? It's interesting. You would think that it's easier to receive deliveries because everyone's home, but everyone's home doing things. And so you're not necessarily available when the delivery driver comes to the door. And so there is a significant amount of missed deliveries. The biggest line that I've seen, I don't count, but they're always down the street and around the corner. And you just see everyone looks not very happy at all.
No, it's not a fun place to be, is it? It's interesting that you said that everyone's home, but it's not delivered. And I have 2 children and my wife and I, so there's 4 of us in the house. And even then, they'll come and everyone's on a Zoom of some sorts. The kids are Zooming for school. I could be working. My wife could be working. And the only person at the door is the dog going nuts, interrupting everyone's Zoom. So you're right. Even though we are all home, deliveries have not necessarily become any easier. If anything, they've become a little bit more frustrating because there's so many interruptions in your workday taking deliveries because everything's coming through delivery now. So yeah, it is quite interesting. Tell me, I know that you mentioned earlier, it's not just parcels. You're also going to be looking at groceries and so forth. Do you think you'll ever get to a point where, let's say you have these huge apartment blocks, like say there's 200 apartments in a block. Obviously, Woolworths can't come in and put 200 people's food in a single spot. There's just too many. Do you ever think it'll get to the point where they actually go up to find the apartment, or is that just way too far? I'm just thinking, how do you cope if you've got 200 people all wanting a Woolworths delivery?
So the new apartment that we're launching into has refrigerated and freezer lockers.
Does it really?
While 200 people may want a Woolworths delivery, they may not want it on the same day.
Yep.
As far as delivering into apartments, into buildings, and into homes, there's been a lot of work in Sweden around grocery delivery providers entering the door and delivering into fridges. And so imagine like a Woolies person coming into your home and delivering your groceries straight into your fridge and freezer.
That would be weird.
I think from a consumer sentiment perspective, Australia, we're not there yet. We're not very trusting. And the deliveries will most likely be scoped and remain scoped down to the foyer, and that's just because of security reasons. One is convenience, and it's more convenient for the delivery provider to enter the foyer and remain in the foyer, but also as far as security and integrity of security within the building. Most building owners and apartment owners don't want people coming up to floors that they don't have an apartment at.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Now, tell me, you're obviously going to be hiring again with your new raise. You've obviously got a team already. For anyone who's watching the show and thinks, I love this idea, I want to be involved, why would someone want to come and work with you guys? Tell me in your own words.
We're solving a huge problem that hasn't been solved yet. And there have been multiple attempts to try and solve the last mile delivery problem associated with the last 50 metres. One Key Access, the approach that we're taking is really different, really unique. That's in itself, it's the way that we're trying to solve it is a very unique way, and it's a really complex problem. So from a problem solving perspective, anyone that likes sticking their teeth into a really big problem will enjoy coming to One Key Access. I like to think we're a fun team to work with and fun to be around. So I think that if someone really has conviction to want to solve problems, they're brilliant what they're doing, this will be an environment for them to thrive in and have fun at the same time.
Awesome. And have you brought anyone on during any of the lockdowns? I imagine you must have.
No, not yet.
Oh, that's good.
We've been keeping the team really small.
Okay, because I was wondering, I was going to say, how have you dealt with the whole onboarding thing? But if you haven't had to do it, then better. And hopefully you won't have to, because hopefully we're heading towards the exits of them. So that's good, because we've asked a few founders, and it's difficult to try and bring someone into a team environment when you're not technically together as a team. Look, what a fascinating solution. I kind of done a tiny bit of research on it, but now you've explained it, it really makes a lot more sense to me. And I can't see this not being a success. I just can't see how it couldn't be. I think internet delivery will grow. Obviously, there's this talk of at some stage drones doing deliveries and things like that. Who knows what sort of solutions you could create around that. There's a very exciting future for this kind of work, I feel.
Absolutely. And even with drones need access somehow into a building. And so that's the idea of One Key Access, is that we're agnostic to the entire marketplace, and we make it really easy for couriers to gain access, for individuals to gain access, to do that delivery and make it really seamless to any smart delivery location.
Yeah, I mean, you could already use it for drones. You know, if they had a proximity fob on them that opens something in the roof, it's all ready to go, and I'm sure you're only going to refine it and make it better. So it's very exciting. Look, well done. I think it's really interesting. I hope the capital raise goes well, and likewise, if anyone's interested in that, they can certainly reach out to you over LinkedIn, or they can reach out to us and we can put you in touch. But congratulations. Thank you so much for coming and telling us all about it. And we look forward to you solving all of our delivery problems moving forwards.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.